What happens when a mountain man went to still nearly all his life and is confronted by a creature of the night? Find out right now on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. Join us as Reverend Jeff takes us down into central Pennsylvania with more official Bigfoot sightings from Clearfield County. All that and much more on tonight's Squatchers Lounge podcast. And now, your host, the podcaster to the deities, Reverend Jeff Kelly.
There should be some applause in there somewhere. I swear there should be. Hey, there you go. That's right. I am the host of this mess. They call me Reverend Jeff, and we are here to talk about Bigfoot tonight. I'm here. You're there. That makes this whole thing glorious. And tonight we're talking about Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. Hey, now last time we talked about Cambria County, or it might have been Allegheny County, but Cambria County is just south of Clearfield County, so you can imagine that the Sam Squanches run from here to there as well. Thank you for screwing me once again, YouTube, while trying to use your screen share software. Anyhow, we're going to try and move right along with this. Give me just a moment, and I'll be able to screen share what I would like. Yeah, they put this great big white box like right in the middle of your screen, and it's very difficult to see anything past that. Anyhow, hey, we were talking about this one night, and this article actually came up today. It was posted back in January, but whatever. Man lived nearly 30 years in the mountains of Alaska in his log cabin that he built with his own two hands using mostly tools he built in the wilderness. That's right. Dick Pronicke. That's right. He was alive until 2003 and become an icon of wilderness living in Lake Clark National Park and Preserve. Born in Iowa, and then a rancher before joining the Navy. And after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, received a medical discharge and decided that he again would take up ranching. In 49, he made his first visit to Alaska at the invitation of a friend, and that was it for him. By 1960, he had making his first visit into Twin Lakes. By 67, he had begun to work on his own cabin, and by 68, it was done. You should take a look at it. There's a series on YouTube about it. There's a PBS series about it as well. But I can't remember the exact name of it. But if you look it up under Dick Pronicke, that's right. You can definitely find it that way. It's a cool story to watch. I mean, the dude was like 50 when he took up and went into the woods on his own. Hey, you know, a man catches a shark out of a Missouri river in St. Joseph, Missouri. And that's a bull shark, by the way. That's a man-eater. That's stuff that takes giant chunks out of people, does it? So if you catch a saltwater shark in a freshwater river in Missouri, you should probably do what this man did and kill it, because it doesn't belong there. Late April, Bill Wrightley was fishing with a few of his friends, and his catch was these. It felt like a catfish. Nothing ordinary. I was fighting it for 2.5 hours when I finally saw the tip of the nose of a shark. Scientists arrived on scene of the location where they took the shark in for a closer look. It was a mother and said it had a litter of babies. To be careful of swimming in rivers. It's not recommended. They plan on taking fish south and releasing and be released back into the ocean. That was dumb. Yeah, don't do that. Kill it. Okay. You know, and to tell you the truth, bull shark's not all that bad tasting. Baby bird from the time of the dinosaurs found in fossilized amber. That's right. Dun 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 dun. Now we'll be able to bring back Jurassic Park birds too, right? A 3-inch piece of amber contains the fossilized remains of the baby bird that lived about 99 million years ago. CT scans reveal that it's the most complete fossil ever found in Burmese amber. Wow, very, very cool. You can check that one out. NationalGeographic.com. Okay, moving up. Here we are, people. The gentle genius of the bonobo. That's right. This dude works with bonobo apes, which can understand spoken language and learn tasks by watching. Forces the audience to rethink how much of what a species can do It's determined by biology and how much by cultural exposure. That would be very true. Dogs learned a lot of things by living right along mankind as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be primates. It was the TED Talk. It's definitely worth a watch. Yeah, it's a little long-winded, but you learn a lot about bonobos in the process. And this is the one like Kanzi, who can start and cook his own meal, can light and smoke a cigarette. Mind you, he didn't learn these skills on his own. He was taught these skills, but he has retained them over the years and could possibly teach others if they were willing to listen. Coast to Coast AM, consider the source. North Carolina town embraces Bigfoot. A small town in North Carolina has turned to an unlikely icon in an effort to rebrand their community. Bigfoot. Nestled in the heart of the Uwharrie National Forest, the town of Troy, North Carolina, boasts a population of just under 3,500 residents. Hoping to give their community an identity that helps it stand out amongst other small towns, Troy has adopted Bigfoot as their unofficial mascot. The famed cryptid is featured in the town's tourism brochures and has been prominently added into their logo, their Troy Fest weekend of community events, which being held later this summer. Bigfoot's one thing some people like, town planning director Johnson Bray explained to the Courier Tribune newspaper. If you think about it, it brings out the child in you. I don't know about that. Anyhow, if you're a fan of the Coast to Coast with George Norrie website, that's where I got that one. You can read it there too. CliffBarackman.com. Cliff posted up an interesting look at regional Bigfoot books. You can actually buy books, to the appropriate place. New York, Oregon, the Beast of Boggy Creek in the swamps, the Lake Worth Monster, the Asian Wild Man. So if you really wanted to kind of get specific, there's a New Jersey book in there. You can find the list of these out there on Cliff Barackman's website. That's right, cliffbarackman.com. Okay, moving right along. Federal employee claims he just saw Sam Squanch. That's right. USPS worker in West Virginia claims he saw an unidentified primate in the western side of the state. 34-year-old Brent Smith Todd told Cryptozoology News he was driving home from work on the road between Jefferson and Hurricane when he spotted the creature about 2:15 a.m. on the 9th of June. I saw it for about 45 seconds, claimed the federal employee. The Bigfoot-like creature, he added, was about 8 foot tall and was walking upright. It was black and very hairy, like an ape with long arms. It was huge, Smith said. There you go, people. It was a mailman says he saw it. It's probably true. I don't know. Maybe we read it on the internet, so it must be true. All right, we're going to finish out the news tonight. Is Bigfoot a dangerous ape? Was it snapped lurking in the U.S. woodland? Apparently, there was some video here of an escaped animal in California. He said he felt like something was watching him in the woodland area. He pulled out his phone to capture the creature after feeling like he was being stalked. Jake, who works in the woodland in La Crescenta in Los Angeles, United States, told KTLA, at first, I heard a bunch of strange noises in the trees. I figured it was just some type of bird or something like that, and then he gets a quick picture of something like this. People say it looks like a chimp. Some people say it looks like an ape. Some people says it's Sam Squanch. I don't know. It's down there in L.A. You can check it out. This one is on express.co.uk. That will wrap it up for this edition of the Squatchers Lounge Podcast News. That's right. You can find us every single day out of facebook.com/groups/SLounge. We kind of hang out there. When I say we, I mean me and Dean and Jevin and a whole bunch of people. And yeah, there's that's the thing that we do. You can also find the fan page at facebook.com/SLounge Podcast. And then you can also find us here at youtube.com/SLounge Podcast. Imagine that. It all matches. This white box is just killing me today. It really, really is. Now I know why, because I'm looking in the wrong place, because it's time to actually get our quasi on with our quasi theorist Mr. Dean Cooper, but this stupid box won't let me find his picture. There it is. Yay me. Mr. Dean Cooper. It's time for some quasi theories. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Solar flares are electrifying. Solar flares make for pretty northern lights and southern lights. The bigger the flare, the bigger the lights. The flare has to be aimed and timed just right, though, to hit the Earth. A British amateur astronomer, Richard Carrington, was the first one to observe a solar flare back on September 1st, 1859. Actually, another British astronomer, one Richard Hodgson, saw it at the same time, but somehow Carrington got first dibs on it. The Carrington event was named after him. What was the Carrington event, you might well ask? Well, that flare came at us with a major rider attached to it, a huge coronal mass ejection that hit us 17.6 hours later. Coronal mass ejections are mainly composed of electrons and protons. Since those electrons and protons have, respectively, negative and positive charges, they wreak havoc on our magnetic field, making it surge stronger and weaker, back and forth across the planet. The Earth's magnetic field twerks, as it were, the twerking continuing for as long as it takes for the mass of particles to go by. Now, we all remember our basic school physics, don't we? What happens when you wiggle a magnetic field around an electrical conductor? Well, don't we? Do I hear crickets chirping? Telegraph operators around the world in 1859 had a direct experience of what happens when a magnetic field twerks around a copper telegraph network. Electricity is generated. Sparks were reported flying off the key onto the operator's hand, some getting burns from the shock. Sparks flew off insulators on the telegraph poles. Operators disconnected the batteries that powered the lines, but were still able to key in messages using the induced current. Some wires melted. There's plenty of evidence that such things have hit the Earth in the past relatively frequently, geologically speaking. Here's a hypothetical quasi-question. What effect would a Carrington-scale coronal mass ejection have today? The answer is not at all hypothetical or quasi. It would blow out most of our satellites, electricity grid, cell phone network, radios, TVs, cell phones, computers. Anything with an electrical conductor in it could be toasted, even your toaster. Need we worry? Surely, knowing that such things are likely to happen, our engineers, our governing bodies, our corporate masters have more than adequately prepared things up and running toot sweet. You know, an adequate supply of backup electricity transformers and such emergency plans and similar reasonable precautions, like putting our electrical grid underground and shielded. Perhaps in a happier alternate reality, our leaders have done so, but not in this timeline. When the next big coronal mass ejection hits us, it will be, as my college buddy Weird Ward would say, toot toot kablooey. You may read the text of this on my blog at bydean.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
But something tells me toot toot kablooey had nothing to do with electricity. We will find out again. Thank you, sir, for your it won't let me stop sharing it. That's because it's not a share. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dean Cooper. I was having a wonderful night, and now it's just one of them that it's just turned into a disaster. But hey, we're gonna get through it anyhow, because it's time for a little bit of camping tips for stupids.
Camping tips for stupids. Tip number 41. Ever since the invention of coffee, by Jesus I assume, Americans have been addicted to it ever since. And any true red-blooded American camper will pack coffee into their kit before anything else goes in. Camp coffee is a staple to American camping. No fancy smancy espresso or French press or that weird stuff that comes in those little plastic cups. Keep that crap back in hipster little millennial land where it belongs. This is the woods, where Darwin is waiting in the bushes to kill you. Cowboy coffee is the most simplistic and basic way of making coffee. And when it's 4 a.m. and 28 degrees and you're barely awake enough to take that morning pee without checking the damn wind first, yeah, you want easy tasks to do. Just pour the amount of ground coffee you want into a pot of water and bring that pot up to a roaring boil for about 3 minutes. Take off fire, let it sit for a minute, and pour about a cup of cold water into it to let the ground sink down to the bottom, and then let it sit for another minute. Then pour yourself a big, good hot cup of that shit, and wake the fuck up and go catch them walleye. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids. Remember to spay and neuter your idiot population.
There you go. Spay and neuter your idiot populations. Thank you so much, Mr. Jevin. Camping Tips for Stupids. Go check out Gone Camping or The Life and Times of JCM. I'm not really sure which one he's promoting these days, but we'll promote them all because, hey, why not? Hey, you know what that means? This is the point where we get to say hi to all of them peeps that are out there hanging out in the live hangout. You have to be here live on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and have said something in the chat box for me to know that you were here. So let's see who's hiding out tonight with us. Speaking of the life and times of JCM, there he is. That's right, the Camping Tips for Stupids man himself. Andrew Jones, how you doing, sir? There's a Starshine hiding out in there tonight. There's Duty James. That's right, I said Duty. How you doing? Squatch Box and Christopher, good for getting your chores down, son. All right, let's see here. Rod Dupree, he's always in the place to be. Kurt Harris, there's another sir. That's right. Now batting third, playing center field. Kurt Harris. James the Grower's in the house. Lance Windsor's in the house. Sam Sclance Rivera's in the house. Oreo Cream Rocks, that's right, she's in the house. Angels Hooser Nook, hello there. Glad that's a long name, but I'm glad you're there. There's Gary and Whitney White. They're trucking it up tonight, doing blind melon in Texas or something. I don't know. Bringing back melons. They're bringing food to your table. Let's see here. Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling. That's right. Let's see who else is floating around. I know there's more than that. We're going to scroll up here just a little bit. Jason Gird's in the house. Brown Dwarf's in the house. Then there's more than that. I know there is. Of course, our quasi-theorist, Mr. Dean Cooper, swinging that moderator hammer out there, so don't get out of line. Ivan 0135, how you doing? So glad you could make it to us this week. All right, we're moving on up. Jonathan Dowdy, hey, glad you could be there. I didn't want to miss you, especially this week, because I think it did last week. All right, we're still moving on up to the east side. That's right, I'm going to be just like Sherman Helmsley, living in a deluxe apartment in the sky high. Bobby Reich's in the house. How you doing there, Chief? Hope you're feeling good. Bobby might join us up there at the camp out this week. By the way, Candy Apple's in the house. August 24th to the 27th, Sierra City, California. We are gone squatching. That's right, people. And we are taking it deep inside. If you want to go squatching with the Squatchers Lounge podcast, message me on Facebook. Send me an email, sloungepodcast@gmail.com. We have a nice size group already going, but we still got about 3 spots left. So if you want on board, get a hold of me and I will reserve a spot for you. Okay. I'm going to scroll up here a little bit higher and make sure that I didn't miss anybody from earlier on this afternoon. I think I just saw somebody that I didn't see before, but I did. There's a Steen Ronnie. How you doing? I know a barefoot Ronnie. Is he related to you? Do you know Victor? Can I hold $10? Hey, does your car go more in reverse? Because I got to take a bus. Squatchbox will know exactly what that means. I'm sorry, I lost my native mind there for just a moment. Okay, and I knew there was going to be somebody up there. Jeremy Harrison was checked in early, but I didn't see him later on down the road, so I'm glad I looked up high enough. If you left me a message here at the bottom, I'm going to check right before we get back to it, because it is time to talk Bigfoot sightings, encounters, and wrap it up with a Bigfoot campfire story. How can we go wrong with that? I don't think we can. Let's see. At the very end of it, did anybody miss out? Nope. I think we have finally caught Mr. Collier Williams. He snapped in. I almost forgot my co-host on Monday nights. If you don't know, come join us Monday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific when we're doing What You're Watching. We're actually doing movie reviews of sci-fi, horror, and there's a whole trailer trash talk. It's a festival. So come see us Monday nights at 8 p.m. and you'll have a really good time. If you enjoyed this show, it'll feel real familiar in that one as well. So with that, there's a Sweet Pea 21377. And say hi to your son, Andrew. How you doing, Andrew? Well, don't worry. This Saturday, there'll be another Bigfoot campfire story coming out brand new. So for Father's Day, there'll be a Bigfoot campfire story on the table. Duty James, I said it again. It's 4:30 a.m. in London, and they're still here checking us out live. So God bless you. The Reverend is worldwide, and I really love every one of you guys being here with me. So with that, let's get to talking about what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. That's right. I grew up in Pennsylvania. And here we are, outlined in red. You can see I left it on the satellite view for you this week so that you can actually see just how crickety and crockety this place really is. I mean, when you're living in a place that needs gaps for cities to go into, well, then you're probably already living pretty high enough in the hills for Sasquatch to be in your backyard. Let's see what we've got on our list for Clearfield County tonight. Going all the way back, wetting my whistle for a moment, to 1921 in the winter. It's actually an article from 1921, and it gets kind of funny, so bear with me here a moment. Weeks ago, a Snyder County newspaper correspondent who needed the money sent a special to the Philadelphia newspaper detailing the hair-raising experiences of several Snyder County farmers with a gorilla or ape man, and had escaped from the New York City Zoo and made its way through the mountains to that vicinity. The story furnished a productive lend to several other fellas in different sections of the state who lie about their neighbors for a living, quote unquote. And soon the gorilla was reported from these several different sections of the state as well. He appeared for $4 or $5 for around Patton and northern Cambria County, with the result that the ferocious natives are now running into him everywhere. It remained for a West Side citizen to land the ape man close to home. This man approached Mayor Chase this morning and asked that the vigilant guardian of the welfare and morals of the community what provisions he had made to protect our citizens from a possible visit from the gorilla. The mayor said, "Gosh, hang it, I ain't never heard of him." It's not a joke, people. Then the West Sider broke the news of the depredations of the hairy monster. He cited the numerous instances of the ape man's appearance as given by the daily papers from the time to time, and the knocked mayor stiffed with the story that the huge gorilla appeared last night at Wollaston. He had then killed and half eaten a farmer's calf in a barnyard handy to the town. That that had been asked of the Wollaston people, and the possible raise by the blowing of the brickyard whistle. 50 men, I tell you, 50 started out to round up the beast, but that Jim Barron, superintendent at the brickworks, had run into him, and the beast picked up a club and rammed Jim half a mile before he succeeded in swatting him with the club. 2 blows of the club was said to have scratched Jim on the ground. Assistance arrived. The animal beat it through the red bush in the direction of Morrisdale. The mayor's informant said Jim was being brought to the Clearfield Hospital on the 11:15 Pensa train, but he didn't come. And therefore, we satisfied some of the fellas, our West Side friend, with sawdust that the gorilla did not appear, and that there was the same ape man that has not appeared anywhere else of the many places mentioned in the state papers the past few weeks. I'm not sure if this is an affirmation of the ape man or a debunking of the ape man, and I'm not sure the writer of it knows either, but hallelujah for 1921 writers. Gosh dang it, I ain't never heard such things. I'm really glad I made it through that one. Almost gave up. Okay, 1975, summertime in August. Clearest county, of course, was Clearfield County. Nearest town is Luthersburg, 2 miles west of Luthersburg on Route 410. That's right. I lived on the very top of the mountain. I rode my bike down the dirt road from the house to the next hill, turned my bike around and would pedal down the main road and then coast up the next. As I was coasting up the hill, I saw what I thought was a bear crossing the road. Since I was it made no noise. As I got closer, I saw this thing walking across the road. Now, I've seen bears on 2 legs before, so I still didn't think anything about it, except a little afraid of approaching the bear. Well, I was almost right on top of the thing, was just going to ride past it, but I noticed it was no longer a bear. The hair was longer than a bear, dark brown with the reddish highlights, and the hair moved as his head moved. But the real difference was almost right up to the thing, but the real difference was when it got up to the embankment, it reached with both hands to grab the tree branches to help itself up the bank. One hand grabbed one branch, the other grabbed a different branch. That sounds very familiar to my sighting, because that's exactly what that thing did, as it pulled itself back up the embankment. It reached up with a left hand, with an inside left hand, and reached up with an inside right hand and pulled itself up through its shoulders. It was then that I knew it wasn't a bear. This thing, I don't know if it heard or saw me. I turned my bike around and pedaled as fast as I could. Now I wish I could have stayed there to see what it would have done, but I guess I'm glad I didn't. But yes, that's one of the things that Sasquatch and in here in Pennsylvania. It's not far from where this location is. I mean, as the crow flies, this could be the same animal for all I know. 1975 to 1986, you're only talking about 11 years. It acts very similarly, but then again, I would expect all the animals in that area to act very similarly. It's kind of nice to see confirmation of how I describe my animals' interactions as well. Okay. 1978, again in the summertime. Closest town is Clearfield, Pennsylvania, off of the Glen Ritchie Highway. Let me do myself a favor here and solve the problem I was having with the last one. This white box is just busting my chowder here. Okay, so here we go. I was about 9 years old in the summer of 78, and I was sitting on an upper deck area of our house when several things happened all about the same time. I was sitting with my dog, and he started growling and going down the steps towards the lower field area of our property. Our horses were running and whinnying up towards the barn. After seeing them running, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something large and black or very dark brown in the lower field. I only caught a glimpse of it, but I noticed that it was running and had a massive chest. I screamed, and my parents and my older sister came running out. I remember being so scared that I couldn't talk, and I was trying to hide behind my dad while pointing down at the field. It was on two legs, and it disappeared right after I screamed. After I calmed down enough to talk, I told my parents what I had seen, and my dad wanted me to go with him to look where I had seen the thing. He was going to take a 16 gauge shotgun, and even then, I don't think it would have been enough. If the thing. Wow. Horrible. Sorry about that. Oh, it's a sneeze. There's nothing I can do about it, though. He was going to bring a 16 gauge. I didn't think that would be enough if it was going to attack us. It was probably 100 to 200 yards away, but it was still very big to me at the time. On talking with my mom and dad recently about it, they had other strange incidents to add. One was something I also remember happening. We would swim in a stream about a half mile from our house, and on several occasions there would be severe crashing and thrashing of a bush directly across from where we were fishing or swimming. My mom was with us on most occasions and remembered that as well. It was one of the most terrifying sounds I've heard since very large limbs, small trees being broken, and brush being thrashed, something that got our attention in a hurry. It scared us all, and always to find out what it was that was making all that racket. My dad has other stories as well. I mean, that's another indication of, when there's multiple stories from the same area. Of course, if you see them once, you would think that you would see or at least hear them, or others would hear them in the same location over and over again. All right, we moved ahead now to 1993 in the fall, November. Again, the nearest town is Clearfield. The first of the little information, I'm 36 and grew up in Western New York, where I spent a lot of time hunting, hiking, and camping in the woods. I spent 4 years in the U.S. Marines, where I spent most of my time in the field. Every year, I returned home for deer season. In 1993, I went deer hunting in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. My uncle, a longtime resident of Clearfield, took us out to some state game land outside of the city of Clearfield, in on an old horse trail, and went our separate ways. My dad and I walked a couple of miles in from the trail. I dropped my dad in a meadow. I told him that I would pick him up after dark, and walked about 3/4 of a mile further in. I found a nice valley and set up for the evening hunt. The valley was surrounded on three sides by a steep, snow-covered 200-foot hill. About an hour into the hunt, I heard a strange, distant noise. It was very deep and repeated every so often. I cannot place the noise with anything I've ever heard in the wild. Didn't pay much attention to it due to its distance. I continued hunting and listening to the noise, and I started to get a little nervous when the noise began getting closer to my location. It was covering distance extremely fast, and I still couldn't place the deep belch-like noise. Being well armed with a Winchester 30 rifle, I still decided to pack up and leave as dusk was approaching quickly. By the time I had packed my backpack and got on my back, whatever had made the noise was directly at the top of the hill above me. It stopped making the noise and began breaking branches off the trees just inside the wood line. At this time, I had my Winchester at the ready and was watching the steep snowy ledge in front of the tree line. For the first time in my life, I was afraid to be in the woods. I felt as if I was trying to intimidate me out of the valley. I stood there for about 10 minutes on gun shaking as it moved back and forth in the woods, breaking branches. Now it was getting dark and I was terrified, but I knew I had to move. I got a bearing on my compass and began moving quickly toward my dad's position. As I left the valley, I didn't hear anything again and just kept moving. When I found my dad, he rushed us back out to the horse trail, and once out of our vehicle, I asked him if he had heard anything strange. He advised that he had heard the same noise in the distance, but paid it no mind. At the truck, I nervously waited, armed, for the rest of our party, and didn't relax until we reached my uncle's house. Yeah, I mean, that definitely would be one of those situations that it would get to you. He's getting closer. It's getting closer. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I mean, that's the kind of thing that it feels like. Something's coming to get you. It's coming to get you good. All right, we still got a couple of stories to get through here yet. 2008, September. That's right. Closest town again, Clearfield, Pennsylvania, along I-80. I was driving west on I-80 at 65 miles an hour in the right lane with cruise control set at 65. We were returning from a wedding in New York. We had been in the area of the mountainous, hilly forest close to land. The country started to open up with some farmland. My wife dozed, rather lost in thought. I diverted my sight to about 30 degrees to the right and was startled to see something that got my attention. It kept my attention until about 60 degrees to the right. It passed quickly out of view because of the speed of the vehicle and the bank and some foliage obscuring the view. The road is 2 lanes, one way, and I could not return to the area without backing out a long distance. There was no other traffic in sight at the time. What I saw was a figure, only from what I would assume was midway from between the elbows and wrist upwards. The figure was what I think of wrong color. It was the color of craft paper, a craft paper bag, exceptionally slight more reddish. Seen the wrong color from the reports I've read. It was long hair covered, and I could not see a face. It was not moving during the approximate 3 seconds that I was able to view it. It was in a car. It was in front of some woods, not dense, standing about 150 feet away on the other side of the strip of a narrow fallen farm field. It seemed to be facing the highway, although I could not see its face. I assumed the field had high growth in it, as I only saw the upper portion was the only upper body and head, with the hair obscuring any sign of a neck. I could not estimate the size, but it was definitely stocky. Wow. That's another one of those, oh, what the heck was that type of things? It's like, oh, that doesn't belong out here. And then you get to thinking about what you actually saw. He didn't say it was smiling at him, details, but it was enough to think, did I really see that? All right, let's hear the last one tonight. Moving up to just 2013 in the spring, Maytime. Houtsdale, Pennsylvania. That's right. Pennsylvania State Route 153. While putting out salt blocks at hunting spots, I saw 2 creatures. One was in a wide open area. The other I didn't see until I saw where the first one was moving away from me and headed for the tree line. I was no more than 25 yards away. The first one I saw very clearly. It was approximately 8 feet tall and walking upright. It had a sloping forehead. The hands were at about the same level as its knees. My best estimate would be 600 pounds. The color was all black. It had no hair on its face or hands. The only sound it made was when it walked, I could hear the grass being trampled. It never looked my way or made any vocalizations. Its arms swung slightly while walking with the knuckles facing forward and not to the side like a human. My best estimate on the forearm length would be about 16 inches. When I turned to the left and into the tree line, I could see its back clearly, and then I saw the other one. I saw its back only. Shoulders on both were broad and straight, approximately 3 feet across. I smelled or heard nothing during or after the sighting. After they disappeared, I threw the salt block over the 12 feet embankment and left. I have not been back since. The only thing I took away from this encounter is all they wanted to do was get away from me. That's definitely something that I can agree with. Most Sam Squanches, when they're coming around and they run into you, they really don't want to remain. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for our official Bigfoot stories here for this edition of the Squatchers Lounge podcast. I want to thank every single one of you guys for being out there, because it's been a fantastic day. It's been a fantastic night, and we are going to wrap it all up with a Bigfoot campfire story this evening. And it's actually one of the stories my grandfather told me. So, I would hope that it was true. Let's definitely put it that way. I want to thank you guys for being there. And with all of that, may the Squatch be with you tonight. There'll be an after hangout after the campfire story has finished. If you'd like to hang out in the chat room until then, I'll be glad to put in a link. So thanks everybody for being there, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching the Squatchers Lounge podcast. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. Well, I started out this journey simply a child. I couldn't have been more than 10 when my grandpa and I were on a water run. Well, back in those days, the freshwater spring would flow from the side of the mountains, and people would collect milk jugs and travel out of town to fill them up for drinking water. Honestly, it was amazing stuff. Somehow magical in all of its properties. Maybe there were minerals in it. I'm not really sure. Anyhow, the drive was long enough to have a long conversation. And on this particular trip, Pat looked over at me and said, "Jeffrey, do you know what a Sasquatch is?" And at that moment in time, the only thing I really could relate to Sasquatch was the Bigfoot I had seen on TV and read about in library books and the native stories I had been told. And I replied, "Well, I thought those things were out west in California." Pat said, "Well, that's one of them, but they're not just out there. I had an encounter with one of those at my campsite some time ago." This is that story. Well, it was early summer, and as usual, we had already been at camp for weeks, and all the blackberries were ready to be picked. So your grandma had picked a bunch of bushels of them and had given me some to take with me. I was driving not too far from here when a Sasquatch stepped out from behind the brush on the side of the road, crossed right in front of me, and headed up the next bank to go further up the mountain. Well, I stopped my truck because I wasn't really sure what I had just saw. I thought it was very strange to see a bear walk on two legs across the road in that manner, but because I had never seen anything like that before, it didn't look like a bear, didn't act like a bear. It made me scared just seeing it. And after a good while, I got my nerves calmed down, and I started up the truck and went to my other campsite, which wasn't far from where I had just seen the big fella cross the road. I hadn't seen or heard anything else for many hours after he crossed in front of me, so I went about my business for the rest of the day. Once the sun went down, though, things got a bit different. All of a sudden, there were strange calls coming from the woods. It seemed like the noise was all around me, and the smell came up on the wind, and I couldn't tell what it was, but it was really foul. I had the blackberry sitting on a bushel basket sitting over on a wooden table not far from the wood line, and I didn't think much about the noises, but they sounded like a whoop, whoop, not like any other animal I knew about here. It really started to get dark. I had my campfires going, and the camp was pretty well lit, but the woods were still dark, and the sounds had gone away, but that smell was still on the air. I thought maybe something had died near camp. Well, I just wrote it off as that. Well, as the night went on, things started to get really weird. I had been awakened by a stick zooming into my camp from the winds. Not like it had fallen from the tree, but rather as if it had been thrown at me. Well, I got up to check to see if there was anyone around, and I'd noticed that my blackberries were knocked over, and most of them were gone. Just gone, like something had taken them. Well, then it sounded like something was walking around my camp, just walking around and around. I'd never had this happen to me in the many, many years I'd been coming up here. The night kind of went on like that. Every so often, from a different place, something was thrown into camp. A rock, a stick, even a small log had just flown in from the wood line. Well, I had my rifle at the ready if something came into camp, but it never did. Well, finally, as the sun had started to creep up over the backside, and wouldn't you know it, I could finally see what had been messing with me all night. And it indeed was that Sasquatch in the tree line all night. There it was, just enough sunlight for me to see this thing standing up just inside the wood line and begin to move behind a big tree. Once the sun was fully up, I noticed it walked off down the crest of a hill and completely out of sight. Well, I was scared, just as scared as I was the first time I had seen it. I realized what had been stalking me all night, but I wasn't able to leave the camp for 2 more days. So I went out with my rifle and I checked out the area in the daytime, and I'd found the biggest footprints I'd ever seen in my entire life. I guess that's why they call them Bigfoot. Well, I went over to the table where the blackberries had been sitting, and I could follow a trail of them to where the Bigfoot had taken them, sat down in the wood line, and sat there and ate them. They were all over the place, smashed and squished. I had messy berry juice just all over the place. I can only imagine what a mess that animal must have been. I didn't see the animal again after that, and I had to stay at my camp for 2 more days, 2 more nights to finish up what I was doing. I didn't sleep much for those nights, but I never got bothered again after that, although I did get that smell on the air every so often, and still had the feeling of being watched sometimes when I went back to that camp. So if there's something you can bet, if there's one, there are many. There has to be a lot of them to have babies and keep on living on. So you can bet they're up here somewhere. It was scary and exciting all at the same time. Sadly, not long after this, my grandpa was diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome. Many things changed after that. Within 8 years, he was so crippled he had to retire to a nursing home, and his days in the woods were over. I used to go and visit him when I could travel to him, and after a few years, he was near the end. His mind was still sharp, but his body was just so eaten up that there was nothing he could be done. I asked about the Sasquatch story he had told me as a child, if it was true. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Jeffrey, if I ever told you a lie in your entire life, why would this have been any different?" At 10 years old, I was hooked and had the first-hand accounting of what to look for and what to notice. Hence is the origins of Bigfoot Campfire Stories. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.